به نام خدا. حمیدرضا تمدن هستم و اینجا فوتروس مدیاست. در نظر دارم تا طی سلسله جلساتی درباره برخی از مسائل مربوط به مطالعات اسلامی با چند تن از اسلام پژوهان و شیعه پژوهان گفتگو کنم. کسانی که مطالعات و پژوهش‌های مربوط به اسلام شناسی و شیعه پژوهی در غرب رو دنبال می‌کنن، به وضوح شاهدن که از حدود 5 یا 6 دهه پیش به این سو یک رویکرد جدیدی در حال شکل‌گیریه. این رویکرد جدید هم عبارت است از توجه به جایگاه و سهم تشیع در شکل‌گیری سنت اسلامی در زمینه‌های گوناگونش، از جمله فقه و کلام اسلامی. این رویکرد بر این باوره که در تاریخ نگاری‌های کلاسیک در این زمینه به این جایگاه و سهم شیعه، امامان شیعه و اصحاب در شکل‌گیری این سنت توجه کافی نشده و اصل کلام و اصل بحث این هست که این سنت اسلامی در زمینه‌های گوناگونش که عرض شد طی یک دیالوگ یا گفتگو بین مذاهب و فرقه‌های گوناگون شکل گرفته و خب نمیشه نقشه یک فرقه رو به طور خاص نادیده گرفت. در این جلسه با یکی از پیشگامان طرح این نوع مباحث جدید در آکادمیای غرب، یعنی پروفسور ویلفرد مادلونگ، گفتگو کردم که در ایران بیشتر به واسطه کتاب جانشینی حضرت محمد شناخته شده هستند. در بخش اول من از آقای پروفسور مادلونگ خواستم تا خودشون رو ابتدا برای مخاطبان ما معرفی کنند و از مسیری که از تحصیلات تا استادیشون طی کردن برای مخاطبان ما صحبت بکنند و خلاصه ارائه بدن.
I was born in 1930 in Stuttgart in West Germany. This is the capital of Swabia. And I grew up there, but my parents are not from there. My mother is from Bamberg in Germany, a Catholic family, and my father was born in Strasbourg, which at that time was German. And he was a professor for surgery, medicine surgery at the University of Strasbourg, and he was born actually in Rostock in northern Germany, but the family is from a small estate called Mader, and this gives us it the name Madelungen. Which is in Thüringen, near the center of Germany, the Wartburg. So this is where my family is from. But I, as I said, I grew up in Stuttgart, and so my speech is still influenced by the local dialect of German. Other Germans can hear that I am from there. So I grew up there, and after the war, when the war was lost, my father was invited to America as by the American Navy. Actually, he was employed. His mother was German already, so he had an old and he had lived in America for several years. And now he was invited to work for them, and that was in 1946. A year later, the family was also invited to join, and so I went to America in 1947, and I finished high school there first, and then I went to Georgetown University, and began to learn Arabic. After a year, I wanted to go to an Arab country to learn to speak the Arabic, and initially it was planned for 1 year, but I went to Egypt, and but I stayed 3 years, and I got my first university degree, a bachelor's degree, or in French, licence es lettres, from the University of Cairo, originally University Fuad, the first. Of course, during the time I was there was the revolution in Egypt, when the university, which was originally called Fuad, the first university, was renamed University of Cairo, and it's the University of Cairo in Gizeh. So I took my first degree from there. In the meantime, my family had returned to Germany, so I also returned to Germany, and I began to study in Göttingen, but my supervisor passed away, and he recommended me to go to Hamburg, the University of Hamburg. So I got my doctorate at the University of Hamburg in 1957. Then I went to the Foreign Service for a time, as an employee of the state. But I decided to continue the academic career and do my what in Germany is the Habilitation, which gives the right to teach at a university. Also in Hamburg. After my Habilitation, I had the chance I was invited to America, to the University of Texas in Austin, for a visiting professorship, which was my first position. Academic position. During that year, I met my wife, Margaret, who was a graduate of the University of Chicago, and was teaching at the time at the University of Texas, and so that decided that I would come to America. She introduced me at the University of Chicago, and I received an appointment after I had taught 1 year in Hamburg. So from 1964 to 1978, I taught at the University of Chicago, and rose to the position of full professor. I was professor of Islamic history. That was the subject. At that time, I was invited to apply for the Laurean professorship at the University of Oxford, And I did so, and it was Albert Hourani, a very well-known scholar, who recommended me, and so I became a professor at the University of Hamburg, of Oxford. I remained there teaching professor until 1998, when I retired or became emeritus professor. At that time, I did get an appointment as a senior research fellowship at the Ismaili Institute in London, where I had been occasionally doing some teaching before. Now I got a part-time position, a quarter position in London, and that is what still is my employment. I'm still employed by the Institute of Ismaili Studies. Quarter appointment, as I said, so I go once a week from Oxford, where I live, to London, and I'm available there and assist young research students in their research, and do also research in the context of Ismaili studies. So that is my present situation. But in the meantime, my wife has passed away just 2 months ago, and but eventually, but we have a son there who lives there, and I will join him, die in America, and be buried next to my wife. I'm sure she is in a better world, and she has become what really an angel.
در بخش دوم من از آقای مدولون خواستم که درباره نظریه‌ای که در کتاب جانشینی حضرت محمد بیان کردم توضیحی بدن. و خب همونطور که از برخی از نوشته‌های اخیرشون برمیاد، خصوصا نوشته‌ای که به عنوان نقد بر جوزف وان اس نوشتند، ظاهراً نگاه ایشون نسبت به مسئله جانشینی حضرت محمد و خلافت تغییراتی داشت. از ایشون خواستم که این تغییر و نگاه جدیدشون رو هم برای ما توضیح بدن.
Well, what has developed is in my book. I still accept that the predominant opinion of scholars that in the Quran there is made no provision for the succession to Muhammad. Of course, Shiites have always maintained that it was really Ali who had the right to succession. Now, on the basis that Muhammad appointed him as such at Ghadir Khum. Now, even at that time, of course, I pointed out that is not necessarily the case, because a testament requires to be the final decision, just before death. And in fact, Muhammad was asked just before to make his testament, but it was in the presence of Omar, who from the beginning resisted and did not want Ali to become a successor. And Omar at the time is said to have we do not need a testament. The Quran itself is enough of a testament. But then he also claimed, of course, that Muhammad himself had said that prophets do not have heirs, you see, which is, of course, totally against what the Quran says quite clearly. But it was accepted, and this is why Ali did not succeed him. But I, of course, in the meantime, the Quran has, of course, quite clearly a law of succession, of inheritance, and succession is inheritance. The heir of a person inherits all the rights, possessions of the dead person, but also the debts, the obligations which he has. That is what succession ultimately means. But the succession is basically from father to son, or better, to the children. The son is preferred in the sense that the son will inherit double what the daughter will inherit. But if there is no son, there is no reason why the daughter will not be the full heir. And the situation, of course, at the time of when Muhammad died, none of his sons had survived, only of his 4 daughters, only the youngest one, Fatima, had survived. So she was, according to the Quran, the legal heir and successor of Muhammad. According to the rules of the Quran, she would have inherited 7/8 of Muhammad's property and rights and debts. The surviving wives, there were, of course, 9, I think, still alive. They would have collectively inherited the other 8, according to the clear, unambiguous rules of Muhammad. So that is the situation. So that if I rewrite my book, the second edition, I will make quite clear that Fatima was in fact the successor.
خب همونطور که دیدید ایشون در نگاه جدیدشون بر این باور هستند که جانشینی حضرت محمد حق حضرت فاطمه سلام الله علیها بوده و دلیلی هم که بهش استناد میکنن نظام ارث در قرآن هست. من اینجا ازشون این سوال رو پرسیدم که آیا به نظر شما این نوع نگاه با دکترین و نظریه امامیه شیعه امامیه درباره امامت همخوانی داره و همسو هست یا خیر؟ چون که همونطور که میدونید امامیه، شیعه امامیه، امامت رو از جانب خدا میدونه، همون نظریه‌ای که در کلام معروف است به نظریه نص، برخلاف نظریه اهل سنت که امر طبق اون نظر به مردم واگذار شده. اینجا این سوال رو از ایشون پرسیدم. حالا با هم دیگه ببینیم جواب ایشون به این پرسش چه بود.
Now, how to call her is of course a question. She could she would have inherited, and there are, of course, mentioned in the Quran and in later Islamic history. There is occasionally mention of where a woman succeeds to an imam or other leader. In that case, she could be called a queen, a malika. There is no objection to that. Of course, an imam cannot be called Malik, because in Islam there is only one king, Malik, and that is the creator. But of course, a Malika is there is no claim that she is a creator, but she is simply, she takes the place of the imam. But if there were a male successor, of course he would be, no doubt, be called imam. And so that is my position. What is vital is that Fatima, that Muhammad wanted Fatima to be his successor, because she was, of course, already also the mother of 2 sons and 2 daughters also. So they would have been eventually the heirs if they survived. And that is what the Quran states, and no doubt what Muhammad himself wanted. But the question is, whom did he? Of course, Ali is also considered the Wasi by the Shiites. Shiites, of course, do recognize that Ali, as such, as a cousin rather than a son, cannot be a full successor. And he would have only through the marriage to Fatima, he could have considered an imam, but not really, because he was a wasi, and a wasi is not an heir. He can and according to the Quran, can inherit a maximum of 1/3 of the estate. So, because the main heir in this case would have been Fatima, and in fact, if you read the history after the a meeting, of course, which decided on that Abu Bakr should be the successor, should be, and Omar attacked the house, not of Ali but of Fatima, because Muhammad had built for his daughter. He had built this house, and this belonged to her. And he, of course, threatened to burn it down with all the people inside, Fatima and her daughters, and Ali and Of course, also Zubair at the time was also in the building. And now the question is, of course, what if Muhammad had written or dictated his testament, whom would he have appointed as his wasi? And there is a good reason that Muhammad was impressed by the objections of Omar. Omar, of course, told him right away after Wadi al-Qum, the Quraysh are never going to accept this. And of course, Omar wanted himself to become a successor, and with the potential of his becoming a prophet like Muhammad. Now, this Muhammad clearly did not want, because there's probably a true story about Omar when Muhammad was unable to call to the prayer. He claimed to the he called to the prayer, but when Muhammad heard that, he said, "What is the matter? Call Abu Bakr. He is supposed to call for the prayer." And this was accepted then by the majority of the Muslims that he preferred Abu Bakr to become his successor. And we may note, if he had wanted Ali to become his successor, he would of course have had to appoint him to call to the prayer in his place. So we have to, in my opinion, we have to leave that question open. Initially, of course, at Wadi al-Qum, quite clearly, Muhammad intended to make Ali his wasi and such the Imam, since he was married to Fatima. But as I said, this is not. We do not know what really. It is quite possible that he wanted to be to Abu Bakr, his wasi. And this was, of course, also recognized by, in particular, by Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, who was proud to be a descendant of Abu Bakr, twice, double the descendant. And but he did not had nothing good to say about Omar. But Abu Bakr, yes, but as it turned out, Abu Bakr was of course virtually dominated by Muhammad, by Omar, and had to appoint him as his successor.
خب همونطور که دیدید ایشون اصرار دارند که ماجرای جانشینی رو تحت عنوان نظام ارث در قرآن تحلیل بکنن. و البته نگاه قدری عجیب هم که دارن این هست که حضرت فاطمه رو در این صورت باید ملکه بنامیم، نه امام، چون امام لقبی است که برای فرد مذکر استفاده میشه و برای فرد مؤنث باید لقب ملکه در این صورت انتخاب بشه. در سوال بعدی من از ایشون پرسیدم که برداشتشون درباره مفهوم خلافت اساساً در اسلام چی هست؟
caliphate, Khalifa, of course, has various meanings. You see, there's if you speak of God has appointed on earth a Khalifa. Now, according to the Quran, of course, Adam was the first, but basically he appointed humanity as a whole as a Khalifa on earth, not a single person. Of course, if Adam is the first, he is necessarily. He represents the whole of humanity. So Muhammad, of course, never claimed to be Khalifat Allah. He always insisted that he is Rasulullah, and he is not a vice-giant who has a right to command on earth. He is only to communicate and is not responsible for what people do then. So there is one case, of course, in the Quran where Daud, of course, is also specifically called the Khalifa, of course, but he is at the same time warned that he must rule in accordance with the commands of God, and he evidently didn't quite fulfill that role, so that he really lost this position. But basically, the situation is that man as a whole is the Khalifa of God over all the animals, plants, and minerals, and whatever God has created, and that is the position in the Quran. Well, quite clearly, Abu Bakr understood this, and he claimed the title Khalifat Rasulullah, but he never claimed the title Khalifat Allah. And Omar claimed first the title Khalifat Rasulullah, but then he also claimed, because he was a military man and wanted to have the military command over the armies of Islam, he claimed the title Amir al-Mu'mineen. And Amir al-Mu'mineen became then the preferred title of the later caliphs. It was Osman who alone and first claimed the title Khalifat Allah, which was then claimed in consequence by the Umayyads. But it is of course important to note here that Osman was greatly honored by Muhammad. He gave Osman, in fact, two of his daughters to marry. One of them had also a son who died at the age of 6. So of course it couldn't have been a successor. And but Muhammad honored him because the Umayyads or the Abd-Shams are, of course, if you go beyond Hashim and up to the next stage, Abd Manaf, they were all descendants of Abd Manaf. So if Abd Manaf is given the honor, then Osman, with some justification, could claim to be the Khalifat Allah. And that is the basis of. But that, of course, was always disputed by the Hashemites, for whom Muhammad was of Banu Hashim, and there was an old conflict, of course, between our rivalry between Abd Shams and Banu Hashim, and with Muhammad as a chosen prophet by God, of course, Hashim should have the honor rather than Abd Shams.
خب نگاه ایشون درباره مفهوم خلافت و عنوان خلیفه رو دیدیم که از نگاه ایشون در فضا و بافتار اسلامی چه معنایی میتونه داشته باشه. به عنوان سوال بعد و برای روشن شدن نگاه خاص ایشون به این مفهوم و البته نگاه جدیدشون، نظر جدیدشون، ازشون خواستم که درباره تفاوت مفهوم خلیفه و امام، یعنی خلافت و امامت به بیان بهتر، توضیح ارائه بدن. ببینیم ایشون چه پاسخی دارن.
The question, of course, if you look at the Islamic law books, in legal terms, the position is usually normally called imama, not khilafa. And that is important because you see that even Sunnis who support the historical caliphate, they do it on the basis that the Khalifa was the Imam, you see. Now, of course, there is also the from an early date, the true imams, the full imams, are limited. Later on, they are not real imams, but the claimants. There is initially in Sunni Islam it was 3 caliphs: Abu Bakr, Omar, and Uthman. For the Kharijites, of course, as you know, there are only 2. There are Abu Bakr and Omar, but they condemn Uthman exactly because he claimed to be Khalifatullah, and the Mahdi's and Kharijites in general consider this as a violation of the Quran, and so they exclude Uthman from usually after 6 years of his caliphate, and when he made such claims, yes, he's condemned and not a caliph. And of course, with Ali, they also do this. Also, they recognize Ali initially, but when Ali consented to the tahkim, they said this is again against the Quran, because it is God who decides and not humans in a tahkim.
خب با توجه به مباحثی که آقای پروفسور مندلونگ اینجا مطرح کردند و البته شباهت هایی که مباحث ایشون با مباحث مطرح شده درباره امامت، وصایت و خلافت در اندیشه اسماعیلیه هم وجود داره، خواستم که تمایز نظر ایشون رو هم بپرسم. به خاطر همین تصمیم گرفتم که این سوال رو مطرح بکنم که آیا از نگاه ایشون وصی همون خلیفه است یا خیر؟
Yes, well, since Shiites in general, and of course you must remember that Ali quite clearly rejected the title Khalifa for himself. He was not Khalifa Allah on the basis of the Quran, because Muhammad himself was not Khalifa Allah, but he was Rasulullah. Now, but all accepted, of course, that he was the Wasi. All Sunnites claimed, of course, that it was Abu Bakr who was the Wasi, you see. If you look it up in my book, yes, there are verses quoted in the battle of the Camel, where the supporters of Aisha say Abu Bakr was the Wasi of Muhammad. But of course, Shiites have always maintained that Ali was the Wasi. But the important thing is, of course, that the real successor is Fatima, and that cannot really be disputed by Sunnis either, because according to the Quran, of course, it is quite clear that.
خب اینجا برای اینکه مطمئن بشم نگاه ایشون درباره بحث خلافت و جانشینی حضرت فاطمه همینی هست که بنده متوجه شدم و یا در نوشتشون آمده، مجددا نظر خودشون رو برای خودشون بازگو کردم تا ببینم آیا درست متوجه شدم یا خیر، و ظاهرا هم همینطوره. پاسخ ایشون رو ببینیم.
The title of Imam is reserved for men, you see, and men who cannot have the title Malik, because there's only one Malik. But a queen, there's no objection to that title. So Fatima could be called a queen. You have later in Islamic history, for instance, in Yemen, you have the queen. How does it queen? And there are some occasions where women were declared queen. Yes.
در این بخش من مجددا سوالی که ذهنم رو درگیر کرده بود و احساس می‌کردم که پاسخش رو در توضیحات ایشون پیدا نکردم، مجددا از ایشون پرسیدم. و اون سوال این است که در شیعه امامیه به ویژه از زمان شیخ مفید به بعد نظر غالب بر این هست که امامت امری الهی است و این نگاه به نظر میرسه که با آنچه که آقای مادلونگ در این زمینه دارن مطرح میکنن خب خیلی متفاوته. تأکید آقای مادلونگ برای بیان نظرشون بر بحث ارث در قرآن هست. از ایشون خواستم که این سوال رو توضیح بدم و بیان بکنن که اساساً نگاهشون نسبت به بحث خلافت و نحوه انتخاب خلیفه و اینکه حالا یک جماعتی برای سایر مردم تصمیم گرفتن و اصطلاحاً اون اجماع شاید به معنای رایجش تحقق پیدا نکرد در بحث خلافت، نگاهشون نسبت به این ماجرا چی است؟
The imama is of course in inheritance. You see, it's not that God specifically chooses one. If he gives the prophet or the imam a child, then that one is entitled to the succession. But it's not so that at the same time, human beings, of course, must choose whom they accept. Even with the prophet, yes. There were many, of course, who did not accept Muhammad, that he was a prophet, you see, among the Arabs. And, the Shiite teaching is, of course, usually that there are only 3 or 4 Abu Dawud and who rejected the caliphate of Abu Bakr. And yes, of course, but those are often considered as apostates, so who did not clearly the Ansar and especially the Banu Najjar, they've felt overruled and resented. They did not want to support Abu Bakr, and certainly very reluctant to do so, as was Ali, because Ali was related to them, of course, Hashim, of course, married a woman of the Ansar. Yes, quite. You have poetry which quite clearly poetry of Hassan ibn Thabit. Which expresses it, which expresses the dissatisfaction of the Ansar.
اینجا من درباره وقایعی که پس از بحث سقیفه اتفاق افتاد و در تواریخ هم ضبط شده از ایشون پرسیدم و همچنین درباره بحث فتوحات که البته پاسخ ایشون قدری کوتاه هم بود. با هم دیگه ببینیم.
No, the violence is never justified because it is forbidden by God. What we really have to say is unless Abu Bakr or Omar or any of them repented of their evil, they cannot rise to the higher world.
به عنوان آخرین پرسش هم با توجه به بحث‌های پیشین که صورت گرفته بود درباره تفاوت‌های حکومت امام علی علیه السلام و معاویه از ایشون پرسیدم.
You will find that Muawiyah, who claimed the position of Khalifa in succession to Osman, also recognized the right of the direct descendants of Muhammad. So there is the question who should be recognized after as the next imam or khalifa. So there is a question whether Hussein can have the right of. But basically, if you look at the treaty between Hassan and Muawiyah, Muawiyah recognizes the right of Hassan to be his successor because he is closer to Muhammad than Muawiyah.
خب مخاطبان عزیز فوتروس مدیا، خیلی سپاسگزارم از اینکه همراه ما بودید و فقط من به یک نکته اشاره بکنم و اون این که جز ارائه هایی که پروفسور مدلونگ در مجامع آکادمیک انجام دادن، ظاهرا این تنها و آخرین مصاحبه است که در این زمینه و درباره کتاب جانشینی حضرت محمد داشتن. با امید دیدار.